The Marina burned against the dusk, like Judgment Day, painted in orange and black. Twin luxury yachts engulfed in flames that turned the water beneath them into molten copper. And through the smoke, Daniel Carter hauled an unconscious woman with platinum blonde waves from the Inferno, while his 6-year-old daughter Lily steadied their small skiff's tiller with hands that should have been trembling but weren't. A red heel floating past like evidence. A black phone sinking into the depths, sirens wailing closer as a ferry horn mourned in the distance, and Daniel whispered, "Daddy saved you," and ran before vanishing into the smoke, just as the first responders arrived. Sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones who disappear before anyone can thank them. But what if the person they saved refuses to let them stay invisible? The morning light through the hospital window felt wrong against Olivia Sterling's skin, too gentle after what she remembered of heat and choking smoke. Her fingers found the singed edge of silk at her wrist, the remains of what had been a $10,000 dress, now reduced to evidence of how close she'd come to never waking up at all. The nurses said she'd been lucky, that someone had pulled her from her yacht before the fuel tanks exploded. But when she asked who, they could only shrug and mention that whoever it was hadn't stayed for the paramedics. The door opened, and Maya Patel, her PR chief, entered with an expression that managed to be both relieved and calculating. "The media's having a field day," Maya said, setting a tablet on the bedside table. "Billionaire CEO nearly dies in suspicious Marina fire. They're spinning everything from insurance fraud to assassination attempts." Olivia pushed herself up despite the protest in her lungs. "What about the navigation system launch? Your father wants to postpone indefinitely. The board's meeting in an hour." Of course he did. Richard Sterling had never believed in his daughter's vision for Sterling Marine Technology's autonomous navigation system, the project she'd spent 5 years developing. The system that would revolutionize maritime safety, prevent collisions, guide vessels through storms with unprecedented precision. The system that Damian Cross had been trying to acquire through hostile takeover for the past 8 months. "Tell them I'll be there," Olivia said, swinging her legs over the bed's edge. "You nearly died 12 hours ago, and someone saved me. Someone who didn't want credit, didn't want reward, didn't even want to be seen." She stood, testing her balance. "I'm going to find out who and why." Miles away, in a modest cabin beside Lake Champlain, Daniel Carter poured orange juice into a small cup decorated with cartoon dolphins, while his daughter Lily arranged her breakfast pancakes into a smiley face. The morning news played on a small television in the corner, the volume low, showing aerial footage of the Marina disaster. "That's where we were last night," Lily said, pointing with her fork. "That's where you eat your breakfast, sweetheart." Daniel switched off the television. "We've got to get you to school." Lily picked up the silver compass that never left her side, the one that had belonged to her mother. She opened it, watched the needle find north, then looked at her father with those deep brown eyes that saw too much for a 6-year-old. "Mom would have wanted you to stay and help more." Daniel's jaw tightened. 3 years since the accident. Since the rescue that had gone wrong. Since the cameras, and the questions, and the blame that had driven him from the Coast Guard and into obscurity. 3 years since cancer had taken Sarah 6 months later, leaving him with a daughter to protect and a promise to stay out of the spotlight that had destroyed their lives once before. "Your mom would have wanted me to keep you safe," he said. "Gentler now." "That's what I did." At Sterling Marine Technology's glass tower in Burlington, Olivia entered the boardroom in a fresh suit, her platinum blonde waves pulled back severely, projecting strength she didn't entirely feel. Her father sat at the far end of the table, his expression carved from the same granite as his business philosophy. The other board members avoided her eyes, except for Damian Cross, whose pale face wore a smile that didn't reach his cold gray eyes. "Olivia," Damian said, his fingers drumming against the polished table, the diamonds in his watch catching the light. "We're all relieved you're safe. though one has to wonder about the timing. A fire, just days before your navigation system demonstration? Are you implying something? Olivia kept her voice level. I'm simply noting that accidents seem to follow ambitious projects. Perhaps it's a sign that Sterling Marine should reconsider my offer. A partnership would provide the resources and oversight to prevent such unfortunate incidents. Richard Sterling cleared his throat. The board has concerns about proceeding with the launch. The insurance investigators need time. The Coast Guard wants a full inquiry. The system is ready, Olivia interrupted. We've run thousands of hours of tests. Postponing now would be admitting defeat. Or admitting wisdom, Damien interjected. Your yacht's own navigation system didn't prevent last night's disaster, did it? Olivia felt the trap in his words, but couldn't yet see its shape. The fire started in the engine room. It had nothing to do with navigation. Still, her father said, prudence suggests we wait. 3 weeks, Olivia negotiated. Give me 3 weeks to prove the fire was sabotage, not system failure. If I can't, I'll consider Damien's offer. The board exchanged glances. Damien's smile widened. 3 weeks it is. After the meeting, Olivia stood in her office, staring at the marina through floor-to-ceiling windows. Maya entered with a folder. The harbor master sent over what little surveillance footage survived. Most of the cameras were damaged in the explosion, but there's something you should see. The grainy footage showed a small skiff approaching the burning yachts, a figure in what looked like a gray Henley pulling someone from the water. For just a frame, maybe 2, a patch was visible on a Navy jacket. Something official. Possibly Coast Guard. Then, smoke obscured everything. He had a child with him, Maya added. The harbor master remembers because he thought it was reckless, bringing a kid that close to danger. Or brave, Olivia murmured. Can we enhance the patch? I've sent it to a specialist. But Olivia, whoever this was, clearly doesn't want to be found. Everyone wants something, Olivia said. Even if it's just to be left alone. Find out what boats are registered to former military or Coast Guard personnel in a 50-mile radius. Someone with water rescue training didn't just happen to be at that marina. Daniel worked methodically on the lodge's diesel generator, his hands steady despite the memories that the smell of fuel always triggered. The Lake Champlain Lodge had been his refuge for 3 years, a place where he could work maintenance, live quietly, raise Lily away from the world that had branded him both hero and failure in the same breath. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He let it go to voicemail. Tom, the lodge owner, appeared in the doorway. Someone came by asking about you earlier. Well, not you specifically, but about anyone who might have been at the Burlington Marina last night. Daniel's hands stilled on the wrench. What did you tell them? Nothing. But Dan, if you're in some kind of trouble, I'm not. Just help someone who needed it. That's all. The way I heard it, you saved Olivia Sterling's life. That's not just someone. That's the richest woman in Vermont. She's alive. That's what matters. Daniel returned to the generator. The rest is just noise. Tom studied him. Sarah would have been proud. Sarah's dead. Daniel said quietly. And the last time I was proud of something, it got her and 3 other people killed. That afternoon, Olivia stood at the marina, now a crime scene wrapped in yellow tape. The burned husks of the yachts had been towed to a secured dock where investigators cataloged every piece of debris. She walked to peripheral docks, trying to understand the sequence of events, when she noticed something peculiar, a child's cupcake wrapper wedged between 2 planks. The kind from Molly's Bakery with the little seahorse logo that Lily loved. It shouldn't have been there. This was a private marina for luxury vessels. Not a place where children typically played. Unless the child had been with someone that night, someone who'd stopped at Molly's on the way. She drove to the bakery, showed the wrapper to the teenager behind the counter. Did anyone buy these yesterday evening? Maybe someone with a little girl? The teenager shrugged, but the owner, Molly herself, emerged from the back. Actually, yes. Regular customer. Comes in every Tuesday with his daughter. Quiet man, always polite. They were heading to the marina to watch the sunset. The little one likes to see the boats. Do you know his name? Molly hesitated, protective instinct kicking in. Why are you asking? Because I think he saved my life last night, and I'd like to thank him. If he wanted thanks, he would have stayed, Molly said simply. Some people do good things because they're good people, not because they want recognition. But she wrote something on a napkin, slid it across the counter. Lake Champlain Lodge. He works maintenance there. But ma'am, he's been through enough. If you really want to thank him, maybe do it quietly. The rain started as Olivia drove north, turning the road into a mirror of gray sky. The Lake Champlain Lodge sat nestled among pines, its parking lot nearly empty in the off-season. She parked and sat for a moment, wondering what she was really doing here. The smart move would be to send a check, have Maya handle a discreet thank you, but something about the way he'd vanished, the deliberate anonymity, made her curious. She was about to knock on the lodge's office door when a small voice said, "Are you lost?" Olivia turned to find a little girl with dark wavy hair and pigtails, wearing a yellow raincoat and holding a silver compass. The child's eyes were serious, assessing. "I'm looking for someone," Olivia said, crouching to the girl's level. "Someone who might work here." "My daddy works here," Lily offered. "He fixes things." "Are you the lady from the fire?" The directness caught Olivia off guard. "How did you know? Your hair." "Daddy said you had hair like moonlight on water. Plus, you smell a little like smoke still." Before Olivia could respond, a door opened and Daniel emerged, carrying a toolbox. He froze when he saw her, his face cycling through surprise, concern, and something like resignation. "Lily, go inside and start your homework." "But Dad." "Inside." The little girl gave Olivia one last curious look before obeying. Daniel set down his toolbox, pulled his flannel tighter against the rain. "You shouldn't have come here. You saved my life. You were drowning. Anyone would have done, but everyone didn't. You did. With your daughter in the boat." Olivia stepped closer. "Why won't you let me thank you?" Daniel's jaw worked. "Because I don't want your thanks. I don't want a reward. I don't want my picture in the papers or my name in your press releases. I just want to be left alone." "Why?" He looked at her then, really looked at her. And Olivia saw something broken behind the steady exterior. "Because the last time I was a hero, people died, and the cameras and the questions and the accusations afterward destroyed what was left of my family. So thank you, but no thank you. Please leave." He turned to go, but Olivia touched his arm. "Wait, at least let me." She stopped, seeing him flinch from even that small contact. Instead, she traced "thank you" in the condensation on her car window where he could see it, then drove away. That evening, Daniel sat at the small kitchen table, helping Lily with her math homework when she asked, "Why did you send the pretty lady away?" "It's complicated, sweetheart. You saved her life. That's not complicated." Daniel set down the pencil. "Remember what happened in Boston? When Daddy was on TV? And all those people came to our house?" Lily's face darkened. "They said mean things. They made Mommy cry. That's why we stay quiet now. We help when we can. But we don't need everyone to know about it." Lily picked up her compass, watched the needle swing. "Mom said heroes don't need capes or cameras. They just need to know which way is north." "True north," Daniel corrected softly. "And true north doesn't brag." Meanwhile, Olivia sat in her home office, studying the salvaged navigation data from her yacht. The system had been functioning perfectly until 7:47 p.m., when someone had introduced a recursive loop into the GPS protocols, essentially blinding the yacht to its proximity to other vessels. The same vulnerability appeared in the second yacht system, Damien's yacht, interestingly enough. Her phone rang. Maya. The patch enhancement came back. It's definitely Coast Guard, from a unit that specialized in underwater rescue. I've narrowed it down to about a dozen people in New England who left the service in the past 5 years. Send me the list. But even as she reviewed the names, Olivia found herself thinking about the little girl with the compass, the way she'd assessed Olivia with 2 wise eyes. A child who'd been in that skiff, steady in crisis. What kind of father raised a daughter like that? What kind of past made a man refuse gratitude so fiercely? Her computer chimed. An anonymous email with a single line. Stop looking, or next time there won't be anyone to pull you out. 3 days later, Olivia received another threat. This one slipped under her office door. A photo of the burned Marina with "Some accidents are warnings" scrawled across it. She took it to the police, but without more evidence, they could only add it to the investigation file. That same morning, Daniel noticed a black sedan parked across from the lodge for the 3rd day in a row. He memorized the plate, kept Lily closer than usual. When Tom mentioned that someone had been asking questions about him in town, not the grateful woman from before, but men in suits with hard eyes, Daniel knew their quiet time was ending. The generator chose that night to fail completely during a storm. Daniel worked in the howling wind and rain. The machine's refusal to start sending him back to another night. Another failure. The USS Templeton, taking on water in a November gale. 4 souls to save, his team of 2. They'd gotten 3 out before the compartment flooded. The 4th, a young ensign named Patterson, had been just out of reach. 20 seconds. If he'd been 20 seconds faster, if he'd made a different choice. Daddy? Lily stood in the doorway, rain slicking her raincoat. You're remembering again. He pulled her close, this anchor to the present. Sometimes the storms inside are worse than the ones outside. Mom said that's why you're brave. Because you go out anyway. The generator sputtered to life, casting light across the flooding parking lot. In that light, Daniel saw the black sedan pulling in, 2 men getting out. Not here for questions this time. He grabbed Lily, retreated to their cabin, locked the door, and called 911. But out here, response time was 20 minutes minimum. The men weren't hurrying, confident in their isolation. Daniel recognized the tactical patience of professionals. His phone rang. Unknown number. This time he answered, "Mr. Carter?" Olivia's voice, tense. "I know you don't want contact, but I've been getting threats, and I think they're here," he said quietly. "At the lodge. Who's there?" "I don't know, but it's connected to your fire. Call the state police, tell them." The line went dead. The storm had knocked out the cell tower, or someone had jammed it. Daniel moved Lily to the bathroom, the only room without windows. "Stay here. Count to 500. Then go to Tom's office. No matter what you hear. Daddy. True North, baby. Be brave." He slipped out the back as the men reached the front. Led them away from the cabin, toward the dock, where at least Lily wouldn't see whatever happened. They were professionals, but not water people. They moved wrong on the wet planks, fought the wind instead of using it. Daniel had been shaped by worse storms than this. The first man rushed him, slipped on the wet wood. Daniel helped him over the rail into the lake. The second was smarter. Pulled a knife. Stayed balanced. They circled each other in the rain. The lake, churning beside them. Daniel heard a car engine, saw headlights cutting through the storm. The man heard it too, decided on quick over clean, lunged forward. Daniel caught his wrist, used his momentum to send him into the water with his partner. Both men could swim. but the lake in a storm, wearing suits and shoes, would keep them busy long enough. Olivia's Tesla skidded to a stop, and she jumped out. I called the police. They're coming. Get Lily, Daniel said, already moving toward the cabin. Bathroom. Yellow raincoat. They found her exactly where he'd left her, counting steadily, compass in hand. 498. 499. 500. She looked up. Did you stop the bad men? They went swimming, Daniel said. The state police arrived as the two men were dragging themselves onto shore. Hypothermic and defeated. They said nothing. But one had a phone that, when dried out, would reveal interesting connections. Tom insisted they stay in the lodge's main building that night. Olivia insisted on staying too, despite Daniel's protests. Someone sent those men after you because of me, she said. The least I can do is make sure they don't come back. In the kitchen at 2 a.m., while Lily slept on the couch wrapped in a quilt, Olivia and Daniel sat across from each other. Coffee cooling between them. Boston, Daniel finally said. 3 years ago. The Templeton disaster. Olivia nodded. She'd looked it up after Maya sent the Coast Guard list. 4 people trapped in a flooding compartment. You saved 3. The media painted me as a hero. The family of the one who died painted me as the reason he died. Both were on every channel, every website. My wife had cancer, was going through chemo. The stress, the protests outside our house, the death threats, it accelerated everything. She died 6 months later. Daniel, I'm so sorry. I promised her I'd keep Lily safe. Away from cameras, away from attention, away from the world that fed on our grief. He looked at his daughter, curled small and trusting. Then I saw your yacht burning, and I could not act. But I knew if I stayed, if my name got out, it would all start again. I won't tell anyone, Olivia said. I promise. It might be too late for that. Daniel pulled out an old laptop. Those men didn't find us by accident. Someone knew I was at the Marina. Knew to look for me, which means someone's been watching you, documenting who you've been talking to. Olivia pulled up the salvage telemetry from her yacht on her phone. Look at this. The navigation system was hacked at 7:47, but there's something else ghost pings to an external server for 30 seconds before the fire started. Daniel studied the data, his engineering background kicking in. That's not just a hack. That's someone documenting the hack, creating evidence. Evidence of what? If I wanted to destroy your company, I'd make it look like your navigation system caused a fatal accident. Fire destroys most of the evidence, but just enough survives to raise questions. Your rival's yacht burning too makes it look like a system-wide failure. Olivia's eyes widened. Damien. He's been pushing for a merger for months. If the system is discredited, he gets your company at bankruptcy prices. Daniel pulled up something on his laptop. I still have access to some maritime databases. Let's see if Mr. Cross has any interesting boat registrations. They worked in companionable silence, the storm fading outside. Lily stirred once, and Daniel covered her more thoroughly, his hands infinitely gentle. Olivia watched and felt something shift in her chest, something that had nothing to do with gratitude. Got something, Daniel said. 3 boats registered to shell companies that trace back to Damien's investment firm. All 3 had maintenance work done by the same company in the past year. Want to bet that company also worked on your yacht? We need more than speculation. No, Daniel corrected. You need more. I need to take Lily somewhere safe until this is over. Don't run, Olivia said. Please. I know you've been hurt, but running won't stop them. They'll keep looking for you because you're a witness. I'm not testifying. I'm not going public. You won't have to. Just help me prove what happened. Quietly. Then you can disappear again if that's what you want. Daniel looked at his daughter, then at Olivia. Something in her eyes, a loneliness that matched his own, made him nod slowly. 3 days. After that, we're gone. The next morning brought the investor gala that Olivia couldn't postpone. She stood before her mirror in the red V-neck dress that had become her armor for these events, platinum blonde waves styled to perfection, projecting power she needed to feel. Maya briefed her on the attendees, the mood, the whispers already circulating about the Marina fire. Damien's been working the room all week, Maya warned. Half the board thinks you're reckless. The other half thinks you're targeted. Either way, they're spooked. Let them be spooked. Fear makes people reveal themselves. She didn't expect to see Daniel there, but as she entered the ballroom, she spotted him near the service entrance, Lily beside him in a green dress that had probably been bought that afternoon. He held something in his hand, a USB drive. He'd come. Despite everything, he'd come. Damien intercepted her before she could reach them. Olivia, stunning as always. Though I'd have thought recent events might have dampened your enthusiasm for public appearances, recent events have only strengthened my resolve, she replied. But her attention tracked to Daniel, who was clearly uncomfortable in the space. Turning down offered champagne. Keeping Lily close, Damien followed her gaze. Friend of yours? He seems out of place. Before she could respond, Damien had signaled for attention, his voice carrying across the ballroom. Ladies and gentlemen, if I might have a moment, given recent concerns about Sterling Marine Technology's safety protocols, I've taken the liberty of commissioning an independent investigation into the Marina incident. He gestured to a screen that descended from the ceiling. What we found is troubling. The presentation that followed was masterful in its deception. Timestamps manipulated to suggest Olivia's navigation system had been active during the fire. Maintenance logs forged, she knew, but convincing, showing systematic negligence. A pattern of failures that painted her as a CEO more concerned with innovation than safety. The room turned hostile, investors murmuring, some actually stepping away from her as if she were contaminated. Someone shouted, "How many people have to die for your ambition?" Olivia stood frozen, watching 5 years of work crumble in 5 minutes. Then, a hand touched her elbow. Daniel, service corridor. He murmured. Now, he guided her through the crowd that parted with ugly eagerness, Lily taking her other hand with surprising strength. They slipped through a door marked staff only, then through a kitchen where Daniel moved like he'd memorized the layout, downstairs to a parking garage. How did you? I studied the building plans after you said you'd be here. Old habit. He handed her the USB. This was lodged in your yacht's auxiliary nav panel. It's how they introduced the hack. But more importantly, it's got Damien's digital fingerprints all over it. Rain was falling again as they reached his truck. The garage's S-curve exit was treacherous in the wet, but Daniel handled it with the same steady competence he'd shown on the lake. Behind them, Olivia could hear shouting, maybe security, maybe reporters who'd scented blood. I'm sorry, she said. You came to help and walked into an ambush. We walked in together. Lily corrected from the back seat. Daddy said heroes don't let people stand alone. They returned to the lodge, where Tom had coffee ready and opinions about rich people who'd believe anything if it was presented on a screen. Daniel spread out papers on the kitchen table, maritime insurance documents, Coast Guard reports, maintenance records he'd somehow acquired in the past day. Damien's been planning this for months, he said, connecting threads. Look, 3 other companies with autonomous navigation systems had similar incidents in the past year. Small fires, just enough to raise insurance concerns. He's shorting the whole industry, Olivia breathed. Create accidents, drive down valuations, then buy everything at discount. Except you survived. A dead CEO would have been tragic, but neat. A living one, asking questions, is messy. Lily had fallen asleep again, the compass still in her hand. Daniel carried her to bed. And when he returned, Olivia was staring at the evidence. With an expression he recognized the look of someone watching their life's work burn. "We can stop him," Daniel said. "How? He's destroyed my credibility. The board will force a sale within days. Then we give him what he wants. Let him think he's won." Daniel pulled up schematics on his laptop. "You said there's a sea trial scheduled for demonstrating the navigation system next week. But after tonight, it'll probably be canceled. Don't let it be. Double down. Invite everyone. Board, investors, media. Make it too big for Damien to resist attending." "Why would I do that?" Daniel smiled for the first time since she'd met him. "Because we're going to let him hack it again. In front of everyone." They worked through the night, Daniel's engineering expertise matching Olivia's programming knowledge. They created a honeypot, a modified version of the navigation software that would appear vulnerable to Damien's exploit, but would actually record every attempt to access it. "He'll have to trigger it remotely," Daniel explained. "Which means he'll have to be within signal range. Probably on a boat nearby. The Coast Guard could monitor. Already called my old unit. Turns out Reyes, my former CO, has been tracking complaints about suspicious maritime incidents. He's very interested in attending your demonstration." Olivia looked at him. "Why are you doing this? You could take Lily and leave." "Let me handle it." "Because Lily was right. Heroes don't let people stand alone." He paused. "And because you didn't have to come warn us about those men. You could have stayed safe in your tower. You saved my life. And you're saving mine. Just differently." 3 days later, the sea trial proceeded as scheduled. Olivia stood on the demonstration vessel in her crisp white windbreaker. Every inch the confident CEO despite the hostile faces of half her board. Damien was on his own yacht nearby, ostensibly observing but really waiting for his moment. She began the presentation, explaining the navigation system's features, while Daniel, anonymous among the technical crew, monitored the ghost signals. There, Damien's yacht was pinging the system, probing for the vulnerability. "As you can see," Olivia continued smoothly, "the system maintains perfect positioning even in crowded waters." That's when Damien struck. The exploit flooded the system with recursive loops, exactly as it had the night of the fire. Screens flickered, alarms sounded, but instead of chaos, the system displayed something else. A perfect record of the hack, including its origin point. Damien's yacht. Coast Guard cutters that had been waiting just beyond visual range moved in. Damien, realizing the trap, tried to flee. But his own sabotage navigation system poetic justice sent him directly into their path. As officers boarded Damien's yacht, something else went wrong. A real fire this time, in the engine room. Whether Damien had rigged a backup plan or Karma had a sense of timing, flames erupted. Without hesitation, Daniel dove from the demonstration vessel. The water was cold, shocking, but familiar. He'd trained for this, lived for this once. He reached Damien's yacht as the man himself stood frozen at the rail, watching his escape literally burn. Daniel hauled himself aboard, found the fuel line that was feeding the fire. No time for tools, he wrapped his hands in his jacket and wrenched the coupling loose, spraying fuel into the water instead of the flames. The fire died to smoke just as the Coast Guard vessels arrived with suppression equipment. He surfaced to find everyone watching. Cameras, phones. The attention he'd spent 3 years avoiding. But then, he saw Lily on the demonstration vessel, Tom holding her shoulders, and she was smiling. Proud. "That's my daddy," she announced to anyone who'd listen. "He saved people." The aftermath moved quickly. Damien's arrest, the evidence of systematic maritime sabotage, across multiple companies. Richard Sterling, faced with proof of how wrong he'd been, formally apologized to his daughter and stepped back from active management. The board, chastened and grateful, approved the navigation system's launch unanimously. Olivia found Daniel at the lodge that evening, packing. "You're leaving? Job's done. You're safe. Company's safe." "That's not what I mean." He turned to face her. "Olivia, you're grateful. I get it. But gratitude isn't." "I'm not grateful," she interrupted. "I mean, I am. But that's not why I'm here. I'm here because you see me. Not the CEO, not the billions, not the sterling name. You see me, and you still helped. Do you know how rare that is? You have your life back, your company, your future, my empty tower, my board meetings and galas and carefully managed existence." She stepped closer. "I've been drowning for years, Daniel. Long before the fire. You didn't just pull me from the water. You reminded me why it's worth swimming." Lily appeared in the doorway. "Are we leaving, Daddy?" Daniel looked at his daughter, then at Olivia. "I don't know, sweetheart. What does your compass say?" Lily opened the silver compass, studied it seriously, then walked to Olivia and took her hand. "It says she's true north, too." Lily Daniel started. "Mom told me before she died. She said, someday someone would make you stop running. Someone who wasn't scared of the storms." She looked at Olivia. "You're not scared, are you?" "No," Olivia said softly. "I'm not scared." Daniel crossed the distance between them, his hand finding hers. "I can't be in the spotlight. I won't do interviews, or galas, or..." "I'm not asking you to. I'm asking you to design safety systems for my company. To work behind the scenes. Making sure no one else gets trapped in a burning yacht. To let me into the quiet life you've built." She squeezed his hand. "To teach me what true north means." "The pay's terrible," he warned, but he was almost smiling. "And the hours are worse. Plus, you'd have to deal with a 6-year-old who asks too many questions." "I have questions too," Lily announced. "Like, are you going to kiss now?" "Because Tom says that's what happens in the movies." Both adults laughed, tension breaking. Daniel touched Olivia's face gently. "Not in front of the 6-year-old. "Later?" Olivia asked. "Later," he agreed. 6 months later, the Sterling Marine Technologies navigation system had prevented 17 potential collisions and guided 3 vessels through severe storms to safety. Daniel worked from a small office overlooking Lake Champlain, his name on no directories, his face in no company photos, but his engineering genius in every line of code. Olivia split her time between Burlington and the lodge, learning to appreciate sunsets without checking her phone, teaching Lily about business while Lily taught her about compasses and courage. The red dress stayed in the closet most days, replaced by jeans and windbreakers that smelled like pine and possibility. Richard Sterling visited once, watched his daughter laugh at something Lily said, saw her hand naturally find Daniel's, and admitted what he'd never thought he would. She was happier than he'd ever seen her. The media occasionally ran retrospectives on the Marina fire, the dramatic trial of Damien Cross, the heroic rescue that had exposed it all. But Daniel Carter's name appeared nowhere, a ghost in his own story by choice. The few who knew Tom, Coast Guard Commander Reyes, a baker named Molly, kept their silence out of respect. On a quiet evening, as spring turned the lake silver and gold, Daniel and Olivia sat on the dock while Lily practiced sailing the small boat he'd been teaching her to handle. "Any regrets?" Olivia asked. "About what?" "Saving the billionaire," Daniel considered. "She turned out to be worth it." "Just worth it?" He pulled her closer. "I told Lily the truth that night. Daddy saved you, and ran. What I didn't tell her was that sometimes the person you save ends up saving you right back." "We saved each other," Olivia corrected. "True north," Lily called from the boat, holding up her compass. We all found it. And in that moment, with the lake calm and the sky painted in shades of hope, 3 people who'd been drowning in different ways finally felt what it was like to breathe. The cameras were gone. The crisis passed. But what remained was rarer than heroics or headlines. What remained was home. Sometimes the greatest rescues happen not in flames and water, but in the quiet moments after, when 2 damaged souls choose to stop running and start building. When a little girl's compass points to family instead of just direction. When saving someone's life becomes less important than staying in it. The navigation system would go on to revolutionize maritime safety, prevent countless disasters, save numerous lives. But for Olivia Sterling, the most important thing it had navigated was her path to a small lodge by a lake, where a reluctant hero and his daughter were waiting to teach her that true wealth had nothing to do with billions and everything to do with belonging. Daniel never returned to the spotlight, never gave interviews about that night at the Marina. But sometimes, when the lake was rough and boats were in trouble, locals would see a small skiff cutting through the waves, a man and a little girl working in practiced harmony to help where they could. They never stayed for thanks, never gave their names, just disappeared into the mist like guardians made of water and will. The Marina was rebuilt within a year, stronger and safer, with a navigation system that Daniel had personally designed to prevent any vessel from getting too close to another's fuel lines. A small plaque near the harbor master's office read only, "In gratitude to those who run toward the fire, not away from it." Damian Cross was sentenced to 15 years for maritime terrorism, insurance fraud, and attempted murder. His empire collapsed within months, bought up piece by piece by the very companies he'd tried to destroy. Poetic justice, perhaps, or just the inevitable fate of those who mistake cruelty for cleverness. But the real story, the one that mattered, happened in the small moments. Lily teaching Olivia to read the compass not just as a tool, but as a philosophy, true north, as a way of living. Daniel learning to accept help, to trust that not everyone with a camera was an enemy. Olivia discovering that success meant nothing if you achieved it alone. On the first anniversary of the fire, Olivia stood at the rebuilt Marina in a simple blue dress, the red one having been retired along with the armor it represented. No media had been invited. No speeches planned. Just a quiet moment of remembrance for what had been lost and gratitude for what had been found. Daniel and Lily stood beside her, and when Lily dropped a wreath of forget-me-nots into the water, she whispered something only they could hear. For all the daddies who save people and run, and for the people brave enough to find them. The wreath floated out into the lake, carried by currents toward the horizon where water met sky in a line as true as any compass bearing. They stood together, this unlikely family forged in fire and cooled in the patient waters of redemption, watching until the flowers disappeared into the distance that no longer seemed so vast or lonely. Because sometimes the greatest courage isn't in the rescue itself, but in what comes after the choice to stay, to trust, to build something from the ashes that's stronger than what burned. The choice to let yourself be found when you've spent so long hiding. The choice to believe that true north isn't just a direction but a destination, and that destination is the people who refuse to let you drift alone. The lake kept its secrets, the compass found its bearing, and 3 souls who'd been scattered like stars across a dark sky finally formed their own constellation, small, perhaps, but bright enough to guide any lost vessel home. What makes a hero? Is it the one who dives into danger without thought for themselves? The one who rebuilds after devastating loss? Or the one who simply refuses to let go, even when the person they're holding on to insists on being released? Perhaps it's all of these, or perhaps it's simpler. A hero is anyone who sees someone drowning and decides that today, at least, no one sinks alone. Share your own story of an unexpected rescue, a stranger's kindness that changed everything, or a moment when someone ran toward your fire instead of away. Sometimes the smallest acts of courage create the biggest waves of change, And every story of compassion reminds us that heroes don't always wear capes or seek credit. Sometimes they just wear a gray Henley and teach their daughters that true north isn't about being seen, but about seeing others when they need it most.